Good morning, everybody. Welcome to July. Welcome County Council and members of the public that are joining us, staff as well. I would ask Mr. Beauchamp to take the roll call, please.
Thank you. We'll start it off with Councillor Agar. Present. Thank you. Councillor Atkinson. Present. Thank you. Councillor Bouchy. Present. Thank you. Councillor Bradley. Present. Thank you. Councillor Broad. Present. Thank you. Councillor Case. Present. Thank you. Councillor Cook. Present. Thank you. Councillor Dennis. Present. Thank you. Councillor Ferguson is absent. And Councillor Hand is absent. Councillor Field. Councillor Field. I believe he's online. We'll mark him absent. Councillor McRoberts. Present. Thank you. Councillor Miller. Present. Thank you. Councillor Sageman. Present. Thank you. Councillor Bean. Here. Thank you. Deputy Warden White. Present. Thank you. Warden Marriott.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call Councillor Field one more time to see if he was on mute. Okay, thanks. We have quorum.
Okay. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. I'd ask any member of council to declare pecuniary interest where it may arise, or now, or where it may arise during the meeting. Seeing none, I would look for a motion to go in camera for the reasons stated on the agenda. Councillor Atkinson and Councillor Bouchy, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Good morning again. Welcome back. If you could join me for a moment of silent reflection, please. Thank you. I'd ask Mr. Beauchamp to rise and report from in camera, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I can report that County Council met in camera this morning for 4 minutes to approve the Lambton County Council closed session minutes dated June 7th of 2023, the Committee P.M. in camera minutes dated June 21st of 2023, and obtained instructions on the potential acquisition of property in the City of Sarnia. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 8, delegations. We have one delegation today. I'd ask for a motion to allow the presenters to approach the rail. Councillor Hand and who's, Councillor Broad. All in favor? It's carried, thank you. So our only delegation is John de Groot, Rotary Club, Heather Martin, Rotary Club of Sarnia, and Michael John Kooy, Rotary Club, Brian Mundt, Wellington Ridge, Sarnia. And I believe it's Michael John Kooy. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Wow. I guess the fellow members of my little group put me forward to do the honors. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for giving us some time. In an ideal world, we wouldn't be here. Our topic is affordable housing, supportive housing, shelter for people who, for one reason or another, don't have it. There are complex reasons for that. Not all of them are in our control. However, there are a number of things that can be done and that other communities have done, and that we as a community, County of Lambton, could do. We have spent time on our own dime, learning how other communities have made some progress. Which is not to say that this county and this council and our community has not made progress. We have had many discussions with social services, and the county has also made a number of bold steps, which we applaud. At the same time, we feel that there is more to learn, and so we would like to share a few of those with you today. We have spent many hours crossing southwestern Ontario. We have visited communities who have put things together, including ones that are not far away, Chatham-Kent, St. Thomas, London, Woodstock, Hamilton, places within reach, places that we could learn from. We've been particularly encouraged by the work of a charity called Indwell, which owns and manages 1,200 units across southwestern Ontario of particularly supportive housing. I'll make it easy and I'll tell you the big thing that we've learned. And it is that while there is money out there from the federal and provincial level for big projects, CMHC funding, sometimes grants, often loans, none of that gets unlocked unless you have a project or multiple projects that are ready to go. They're not interested in funding ideas. We'll call it private donors, take a similar view. They're not quite ready to write you a big check for a couple $1,000,000 unless they know you've got a project that's going to fly. So that leaves one body, we'll call it, to start the ball rolling. And that body is this body. It's the body that takes the courage, and it takes courage, to commit significant funds to get projects off the ground. When the federal government is not quite there yet, The provincial government is not quite there yet. CMHC is not quite there yet. Nobody else really wants to talk to you. And the communities that have done this and have made a dent are the ones that have made those bold moves. This council has committed $3.8 million, if I'm not mistaken, per year over a 10-year period. That's a pretty big chunk of money. One of the things that we want to share ask of you is to put a plan in place to get that money out the door before the feds, before the provincial, before CMHC and others are quite ready there to back you. It's going to take courage. So that was the big picture. Maybe I can drill down and make 3 very specific suggestions for council to consider on this topic. You know, we've discovered that in order to get a project off the ground, and when I say a project, I mean maybe 40 or 50 units, a dedicated build that is going to include some affordable housing, but housing that is, you know, for folks who need very special kinds of support, all including, but a range. You know, folks who maybe don't need so much support, they just need a relatively affordable place to live. In order to make a project work, 3 things need to come into focus. One is the land and who's going to own it. It might be the county, it might not be the county. Maybe the county owns the land and somebody else owns the building. So some kind of ownership structure. The second thing is capital funding. And again, once a project gets off the ground, there's capital funding that comes from this body, perhaps from municipalities, and certainly unlocking private donations. Not-for-profit groups, charities, etc. And then the third is for the municipality to take a lead in strategically. So what are the things that this council could do next to move that all forward? So we have 3 specific suggestions. So one is to commit to a 5-building, 5-year plan. You know, it's difficult to get one of these buildings off the ground. Imagine getting multiple buildings off the ground. They're all going to follow different timescales. So to have more in the hopper, if I can use an agricultural metaphor, or in the funnel, is the way to go. Most communities have not just one, but several projects at different stages of development. Again, we want to unlock the CMHC, the federal, the provincial funding. That needs to go to shovel ready, so we need to get multiple sites shovel ready. And we've been working, we have a list of 7 or 8 that are that would be in the queue. Number 2 would be commit money and resources, that's staff resources, others, to acquiring land. That's a very practical step. It doesn't necessarily mean going out and paying market value for that land. There is land that can be bought, that's for sale, but there are also people out there who are willing to partner with this body and with other players who maybe don't want a penny for the land, but they would like to see their acre and a half being used for something purposeful. That's number 2, commit to land acquisition. And number 3 is to commit to seed funding. I'll reiterate a point I made earlier, which is that getting these projects off the ground requires some commitment. It starts out with an ask of about $250,000 to get zoning and the various permissions in line, and then obviously it grows from there. That's something that this body could authorize. It would send a very clear message. All of these 3 would set a very clear message across the province that Sarnia Lambton is serious about this. And that, as I said, unlocks willingness in government partners, upper tier government partners, but also in among private donors, and places like charities like Indwell, who so far has skirted Sarnia. They're in Chatham, Kent, they're in London, they're in St. Thomas with major builds, and so far they've skirted Sarnia Lambton. We've asked them why, and the answer is they're waiting for a sign, if I can put it that way, a sign that the county is a willing partner. And that's not to say that the social services has not been in touch with them. They have, I understand that they have, but I think a sign from the political level that Sarnia Lambton, that the county is committed to taking some practical steps. I see that I have 1 minute and 40 seconds left. In that 1.5 minutes, I'm going to leave you with another 5 suggestions if I can. So one is, and these are very practical, St. Bart's in Sarnia is an organization has put out a request for expressions of interest in that in redeveloping that site with neighbors, a property owned by the County of Lambton. The closing date is July 17. Would this body not be interested in pursuing that? So far, I understand nothing has been. The Victoria Street parking lot, the City of Sarnia is considering putting that up for affordable housing. One suggestion would be to donate that to the county. Wouldn't it be great if this body said to the city, we would love to be the new owners of that property, and we commit to developing affordable, supportive housing. Let me mention 3 more. A funding commitment. The $3.8 million per year is coming from this body into reserve fund. Maybe I've got my figures wrong, but I'm not sure that $3.8 million has been hit for the past couple of years. We strongly encourage you to do so. Number 4, CMHC Accelerator Fund. Applications for the fund are due by 18th of August. Is that something that the county is participating in? And then partnership. One of the ways that I've reached the end.
Thank you, Mr. Kooy. Any questions? Councillor Bradley.
If you could have finished beyond the 10 minutes, what would you have said?
The charity called Indwell, one of the ways that they start work in a community is very sensitively, they embed somebody in the community, a professional, who works with the social services, in this case, County of Lambton, to identify very specific community needs. So they work for a year or 2, kind of quietly behind the scenes, making sure all the partners are on board. If the county said, we're gonna set aside a couple $100,000 to fund, 1 or 2 people to come into our community to do that, I think we would find ourselves we may find ourselves a willing partner in that organization.
Follow up, Councillor Bradley.
Directed to the CIO, and we are dealing with the Accelerator Fund later in this meeting, which I presume got approved. What needs to be done to move this forward in a coherent and also an aggressive manner to get, and I've met with this group numerous times, how can we bring that together with the county to get some quick results, or to Ms. Calisani, whoever, in a manner that you can't do it on this floor? So how do we move this forward immediately to see if we can get something back here for September?
Mr. Tifo, please. Or Ms. Calisani.
Here we go. Thank you for your deputation. All very good ideas, and all ideas certainly that we've been contemplating. As you know, it does take a long time. We do have several builds right now in the hopper, if you will say. Maxwell Park Place certainly has taken longer than we anticipated for a whole variety of reasons, but we do hope to have occupation later this year. The Ontario Aboriginal Housing Corporation will be breaking ground later this year. Again, it took a little longer than we anticipated, but those are happening. So where do we go from here? As Mike noted, the council has put aside $3.8 million over the next 10 years, and we do need to start moving that money. However, to date, we've only gotten $2.2 million of that, so it's a fairly small number still, not enough to be doing a fulsome build. So we need to start to grow that. I would respectfully ask that we don't look to do 5 builds in 5 years. I think when you look at our housing and homeless plan right now, the objective we set, and it was low, but what we set between 2020 and 2025 was to build 75 affordable units. I think when we redo that plan, which will be later this year, we have to have a more aggressive number. And I think it should be units, not builds, because you could have a number of builds that could have affordable units in them. And our focus really is deeply affordable as well. So we'd like to set that, and that I believe should happen through the Housing and Homeless Advisory Committee in consultation with the community and this council. But I do think that needs to be set, and we need to move towards it. Council will be receiving a report, several reports in September. We are looking to use some of that reserve for seed funding. We understand that there are a number of nonprofits in the community who may have land and need to do studies, and they don't have the funds for that. So we'll be bringing a report about that seed funding at the next council meeting, committee meeting, I guess it will be. We're also looking to bring on a dedicated person to assist with this development, work with places like Indweld and get it going. Council may recall earlier this year, we issued an RFP for a supportive housing build, both supportive and affordable. We need to bring a report back to you about that, but we were not successful. And I think a couple of reasons. At the time, Indwell didn't have capacity and our numbers may have been too low. So we need to do some more work with them directly. They are struggling with capacity right now. As Mike said, there's quite a few I forget the number of units, but there's quite a few units they're working on. And unfortunately, there's very few other organizations that provide supportive housing. And that is our #1 priority this year, is getting some supportive housing. As for some of the other properties he mentioned, we are exploring all options, absolutely. So I think there is a concerted effort. Does it need to move along a little faster? Probably, but there's definitely a concerted effort, and as I said, council will see in today's package, there's a report about the Accelerator Fund, and as we move forward, there'll be more information coming back to the next committee regarding the other initiatives.
Just do a follow-up, and I'm going to try to be very respectful here. I've been in this chamber for a number of years during this crisis. Got the hottest summer. I think I mentioned here a few months ago. We're going to have the most difficult time, like every other city, with the homeless. And now we're talking another report in September, another report. If you could build houses with reports, we'd be the #1 place in Canada. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. You need that fierce urgency of now. And that's what that summit was supposed to be about, is to bring everyone together and then move forward. So I guess my question again, and maybe it's more rhetorical, is how do we get that fierce urgency of now to get moving, especially when we have a group and they have been working and working. I don't know how much time they've put into this. And I need to explain a little bit, is this seed money is so important because these churches and nonprofits cannot come up with the seed money to do the studies for CMHC, and it's usually a few $100,000. If we could get that moving, there's a number of projects that can move forward. So how do we get that going? I mean, I don't want to wait to get until September, and I don't want to ask for an emergency meeting, but I think we just can't keep on waiting for report after report.
Through the board, Marriott, to Councillor Bradley. We understand the urgency, and staff are actually doing quite a bit of research now on what that would look like. Our hope is to bring it to August committee and have it out on the web with a notice that, pending council approval, and that we would be able to start it so that people could start to get grants by September. So our hope isn't to wait, but it's going to take us some time to do that research as well. CMHC had a similar program, but they ended it because they ran out of money. They had so many requests. We're also wanting to make sure that if they're going to open it up again, we don't want to duplicate. If you can use federal dollars first, you always should. So we're doing some of that investigation, and it does take a little bit of time.
Okay, I had Deputy Warden White first, and then Councillor Dennis second.
Thank you, Warden Marriott, and thank you, Mr. Kooy, for being here today, and appreciate the tremendous amount of work that your group has done to not only bring together some cohesive plans that make sense to me, but also to help raise awareness of the issue, both abroad, throughout the public, and to this council. And I've appreciated our conversations. For the benefit of those who maybe not have engaged quite as much yet in this discussion and this opportunity, you made reference to this charity Indwell. And it could be Indwell, it could be anyone else doing similar work. But the concept of the supportive housing, could you go into a little bit of detail of what those supports look like, so what that looks like for residents, what affordability really means for those residents. And I think for the broader community, some have this notion that putting money towards something like this isn't of value. I wonder if you could discuss perhaps some of the outcomes and what that has meant for communities such as public safety and other ways that it has benefited folks.
Sure, be glad to. Thank you for the question. I'll say two things. So the first is about how these kind of bills are set up. You know, we know that simply putting a roof over people's heads when they have, perhaps there is an addiction problem, perhaps there's a mental health issue and so on. I mean, there's a reason why somebody is going through a tough time and not able to pay the rent and ends up, sleeping in one of our parks. So a previous model was get a roof over their head and walk away. And that's given that model a bad rap. We know it doesn't work. So what some charities have done, like Indwell, like others, is they combine that. And they combine that with a very intensive, it's a very intensive support and a very intentional ways of building community. So for instance, this would be a purpose-built building. And unlike an apartment building where you have a lobby and then you go straight upstairs, there is a very large common area. So people mix. And the building is not 70 units, it's about 45, so that you can recognize pretty much everybody by name, your neighbors. There is a communal kitchen where you're encouraged to have a meal once a day, or there's a place to have a cup of coffee. So it's an intentional way of building community. And if you factor in community along with housing, then people start to trust again. They start to feel that they can make decisions about their lives. They can start to, feel confident that maybe they can go earn a living, right? Make some progress. Rather than being a lot of hand-holding. So that is the model. So it's, there are two things that make that work. One is, money to build the thing, and then another to get recurring money for, paying for the social workers, paying for the folks from CMHC to come by, paying for the programming and so on. And where does that money come from? That typically comes from Ministry of Health. In some communities like London, Ministry of Health funding has been diverted from the hospital, from the primary care, to some of these housing arrangements, precisely because the hospital recognizes that taking care of folks where they live, frees up the emergency rooms, frees up the first responders' time, right? So in St. Thomas, once one of their buildings opened, such a charity, the hospital or the
and actually, I'll log in and send you an email.
Police calls went down by 80%. So that's not to say that we should help folks on the streets in order to save money necessarily, but I'm just saying there is a you're not paying twice.
Follow up, Deputy Warden.
Thank you. So your group has obviously done a tremendous amount of work in understanding the lay of the land and to your perspective, what would work with most benefit. My question is centered around the recent FCM conference, which I attended, Federation of Canadian Municipalities. I can tell you that this issue was the dominant subject. Municipalities from across the entire country are dealing with this particular issue. Almost every session was about this issue. Can you give me a sense in your research as to whether or not you are seeing progress anywhere else in the country? And if so, is this the path that is working, or is everywhere finding themselves in this situation through a different path and then finding a different solution moving forward?
Each community gives it a slightly different flavor. So for instance, in London, the London Community Foundation came in really big. They are a big leader there. The Sarnia Community Foundation has been very interested in their model, and there was a lot of private money that came forward, a very big grant. In Hamilton, where some of these communities started, there's a large donor base, lots of small, like churches, community groups, and so on, where they raise money and they support this. I think it's in every community. The mix is going to be slightly different, but the ingredients will all be the same. There will be strong leadership from the municipality, whether it's the single tier or double tier like here. And there will be private donors, and there'll be some organizations who figured out how to deliver the services. And it's a range. I mean, as Valerie said, there's a focus. Mrs. Colasanti focused on supportive housing, but there's a range. We need there are folks who don't need the high level of support.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Warden Marion. Through you to the gentleman. You noted at the beginning of halfway through your presentation that there was 4 communities. I believe it was Chatham, Kent, St. Thomas, Woodstock in London. I think it's important to note that you have to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. All 4 of those communities are pretty flush with cash. Chatham, Kent, over the last couple of years, they've been building thousands of new units. They've attracted many job creators. St. Thomas, of course, they just landed a huge Volkswagen plant. Amazon there too as well. London's London, it's a behemoth. It's a very wealthy city. They've grown exponentially. They've attracted all sorts of industry job creators. Woodstock has Toyota, and we're just not in the same league as them. So it's only natural that we aren't financially in the same league as them. So it's only normal that that we aren't in the same league as them as far as what we've done. It's like comparing the New York Yankees with the Kansas City Royals. We just can't compete on the same level. But that's not to say we can't try and do our best. But I just wanted you to acknowledge that too as well. It'd be nice to shoot for the stars, but we have to be realistic about what we're working with.
May I respond?
Yes.
Yes, I suppose, the financial side is very important. I guess our approach has been to look at each human as they come, irrespective of the, community or financial circumstances they're in. I remind the council that they have made a commitment of $38 million. That must have seemed about right and about achievable at the time. And we think leveraged on a 4 or 5 to 1 basis would get you all the supportive housing that's required and a bunch of affordable as well. And the other thing is, though it's true that this community lacks the kind of economic drivers that have recently been seen in neighboring communities, we're still a wealthy community with deep pockets. We're doing a fundraiser. We've been at this for 6 months, and we expect by the end of July to have a couple hundred, or 150, maybe $100,000 at least. And that's just from doing some fundraising, and that's on the down low, right? So the community, if the council came out and said, we're doing this and we need donors, you've been successful in your business here, why don't you consider helping out on this front? Then I think people would step forward if it's the right handful of projects.
Councillor Hand, please.
First of all, I want to commend your group for the work that you've done and are still continuing to do. When you were talking about all the various potential projects, it was very interesting that there are those ideas out there. First of all, when I saw the proposal, or the movie with the Indwell, I was really impressed by the work that they do, and I felt like it was a wraparound solution. So you build the unit with the common room and the lunch, but all of the services were there to support the people that live there. So that was impressive. And then the commitment by this council to put the money aside over the next 10 years is the signal. To me, it's a signal. Indwell was saying they didn't see the interest or, you know, the connection to the city, but I think the signal of putting that money there would make them know that this community is interested in working with them as a potential, and that there is money there, and there's money there potentially for seed money for some of the projects if we can't get the government funding at this time. So it feels like there should be more there to make us a viable candidate for them to come to this community. So I hope that we can continue to pursue that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Kooy, and you're welcome. Thanks. Councillor Bradley.
Well, I'm going to turn to staff again. I appreciate the comments back, but we need something from this council, who are the leaders here. I appreciate the staff work, but we are the ones that are dealing with this issue. So again, I turn to Mrs. Calasanti or to Mr. Tebow. How do we get September, October to the point where we can be making, even prior to budget, some decisions on how that money can be allocated?
Well, I don't know if you want to attempt this a second time, Ms. Calasanti. I think it's a political decision here. I don't think staff...
I agree. What I'm simply, I don't want to put forward a motion that's going to just complicate things.
Okay, Mr. Tebow wants
straightforward.
Mr. Tebow wants to comment.
Yes, thank you, Warden Merritt. We do have a baseline ultimately within the county. As you know, the county operates about 830 some odd units already. It has a construction project of about 26 units that will come online by the end of the year. It's contributed in kind through a different council to another project that will be, as I understand it, breaking ground this fall for another 40 or so units. And the internal discussions that we've had, which includes the folks who were here before you today, includes all of those 5 suggestions that we heard from Mr. Kooy. So the commitment that you have from staff is to pursue between now and of course September, each one of those 5 suggestions, and of course return to County Council for instructions. If there is an item that is hot and we strike when the iron is hot in terms of a project for seed capital, whatever it may be, and then we can always jump on that, conditional on, without waiting for a further council meeting, but conditional on a council approval. Ultimately, the commitment that you have from the folks who are in the field, who are back there with us today, from Ms. Colasanti's group, is that all of these 5 suggestions are definitely on the table. They're actively being worked on, pursued, and understanding sort of council sort of wishes, they will be addressed and you will be informed of the progress in September.
Regard, I think we should make this our #1 priority. And that includes being out of budget. If the money's there and all that, not to wait, you know, to budget time next spring, not to wait even into when we're not meeting in December, January. And I'll move a motion that we make affordable housing and affordability in the housing market in Lambton County our #1 priority, which I think we are doing to some degree, but I think it's time we set it.
Okay, motion on the floor, seconded by Deputy Warden White. Further discussion? Councillor Dennis.
I think it's important when it comes to the location of these particular properties that we have an idea of where they're going to be located. Because as a former realtor, I can tell you that this could certainly be one heck of a quagmire when it comes to NIMBY issues and property value issues. If one of these properties are going to be built in a neighborhood or close to a well-kept neighborhood, it could be open up one heck of a can of hornets.
Thank you. Councillor McRoberts.
Just to speak to Councillor Dennis's comment, most of the properties that are going to come available in those areas are not ones that we're paying for. That's not going to be in our budget, so I'd just like to comment to that. Most of them are going to be in affordable areas.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Warden White.
Excuse me. I do think, again, it's important to sort of go back to my line of questioning before, to just help us all understand and open our minds to the fact that this is becoming a very normal discussion across the entire country, and that this being a top priority has significant impact on economics, future economic development, as well as public safety, which I know for certain folks is their top priority. And so to try and wrap this around as a total solution, I think is an important part of this discussion, so that people can understand and accept that whether it's in their backyard or whether it's in their neighborhood, this is going to be a net positive for them and for their lives, for their businesses and beyond. I understand the property value thing and all of that, but I also understand that there are certain folks that are probably more interested in seeing a couple of these properties for profit, and maybe disguising it in some other veil, when the truth of the matter is we have a responsibility here to take care of everybody. And I think if we can just be very clear that as a top priority, this has significant impacts on future economic development as well, and public safety, just to help ease that part of the discussion. Because for some folks, let's be honest, this is just not going to be their priority. It isn't, it probably never will be, but as long as we understand that this is going to have a net benefit economically, as well as from a public safety standpoint, I think this should help ease some of those NIMBY concerns.
Okay, first I have Councillor Case, and then Councillor Bean, and then Councillor Dennis.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Mr. Warden. First off, I'm happy to support this motion, but at the same time, I think we got to make sure we don't lose track of the fact that Mrs. Calistandi and her staff have done an incredible job trying to work within the parameters that they've been given. Let's face it, there's a shortage of housing, period, in this country and in this province. And we also have the issue with trying to find affordable housing on top of that. So it's not just the housing shortage when it comes to affordable housing, it's a shortage of homes, period, within the province of Ontario. And I will say, from my experience in dealing with our folks at social services, it's been a very good one. We had a situation in my community not that long ago. We had some folks that were in need about a month ago, and I'll tell you, the service that I got from our social services people was absolutely incredible. So those people really do care. They are trying to find a solution. They're trying to work with all the organizations. I appreciate what the Rotary Club came and said today. We appreciate all their efforts as well, but this is not a unique problem, as Councillor Whitey said. This is a problem that goes from sea to sea, and I mean, it's not going to get easier, but I do want to make sure that we, as a governing body, appreciate and respect the efforts that our social service people have made in trying to find a way through this. It's not an easy situation. We've got something before us here later on in the agenda that's a step in the right direction as well. So again, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood my situation with our folks at social service and them trying to find solutions to the issues we have has been absolutely incredible, and I want to thank you for that today. And again, I'm fully in support of this motion, but I think we have to be realistic in what we can get done in a short period of time. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Warden. I realize the urgency of this, and I do agree with it. I'm just wondering, though, after we have these houses built, and we got these people in these houses, is there a plan in place, or is there going to be a plan in place to keep them there? Because what I'm worried about is they're not going to be able to afford to stay there, even though it's affordable. You call it affordable housing. So I'm just wondering, what's the after effect, or is there a plan to help these people after?
Ms. Calistani, could you reply to that, please?
Through you, Warren, to Councillor Bean. We do have plans in place to assist people to remain in their homes. We have different levels of affordability. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corp says that affordability is 80% of market rent. That's not really affordable for many of the individuals that we're speaking of, but it is affordable for some of the, what I would call individuals working at minimum wage. So that's why we kind of need the whole gamut. Then we have individuals who are living in a deeply affordable, so it's not a social housing unit, it could be with private sector or a nonprofit, and we provide an additional layer of financial support. We also provide other supports, daily living supports, things like that as necessary, sometimes through our homemakers program. We have community support workers who will work with an individual if they are struggling with money management, if they're struggling with day-to-day living tasks, looking for employment, all of those things. So they're assigned someone, and that would be someone sort of at a mid-acuity who's living on their own. And then we have individuals who need the full supports, and that would be the InWell program that was spoken of earlier today. So we have quite a variety of supports, and it's very individualized, because you're right, once we place someone, we want them to remain housed. Within our social housing portfolio, we actually have 4 community support workers, and that's their entire job, to make sure that people don't get evicted, that they remain housed when possible.
Councillor Dennis.
Yeah, thank you. Just something Councillor White touched on with respect to NIMBY people and the need for this, and I totally understand that people need this. But again, the people that may be concerned about where these are located, everybody pays taxes. Everybody pays taxes, and they have as much say in this as anyone else. And the people that are paying the taxes that don't use this service are probably in all likelihood paying more than their fair share of taxes. But that being said, I understand, I know what's going on out there. I see the middle class being shrunken. I definitely see this, and as far as the people that are going in this affordable housing, it's people probably working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep the lights on and keep their family fed. You can't tell someone to pull up their bootstraps that doesn't have boots on. These are hardworking people. There's probably a mindset that people aren't working. They are working. They're single moms that are working 3 jobs, and I get it. And I see that with what's happened the last 6, 7, 8 years, especially with the carbon tax, with all these, the cost of groceries and inflation and all this kind of stuff, there's going to be a greater need for this. We talk about 80% of market rent, then you hear other people talk about geared to income housing and that kind of stuff. So it's unfortunate that we've been put in this situation that comes down to this level of government. The federal government should be dealing with this, and then the provincial government too as well. It's unfortunate that it's landed on our lap and so on. But again, I just see it from my stake as a realtor for 30 years. Well, my first year in realtor, people talked about housing wasn't affordable, and that's when the average price in Lambton County was about $150,000, and rent was quite a bit lower than it is now. So it's a problem that you're never going to solve, in my opinion. But anyways, I just wanted to remind everybody, it's taxpayer money, and it's not government grants, and even government grants are taxpayer money. So anyways, just wanted to...
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Any further discussion before we call the vote? Okay, request for a recorded vote. Yeah.
To make this the top priority of Lambton County, to endorse that publicly.
I can have Mr. Beauchamp read it if you'd like.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. It's been, so the motion on the table currently is to make affordable housing the #1 priority for the county, as publicly endorsed by council. Affordable housing and shelter as the #1 priority. This motion was moved by Councillor Bradley, seconded by Councillor White, and Bradley has requested a recorded vote.
Okay, and random.
We will start the voting with Deputy Warden White.
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Agar.
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Atkinson.
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Boucher? I have a yes. Councillor Bradley? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Broad? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Case? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Cook? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Dennis? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Hand? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Field?
Yes.
I have a yes, thank you.
Yes.
Councillor McRoberts? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Miller? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Sageman? Yes. Thank you, I have a yes. And Councillor Bean? Yes. I have a yes, thank you. Warden Marriott?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion's carried.
Okay. Moving on to item number 9, minutes of open session council of June the 7th. Do we have a motion to adopt? Councillor Cook and Councillor Hand seconds, all in favor. That's carried, thank you. Item number 10, correspondence. A, correspondence to receive and file. We have one item. Do we have a motion to receive and file? Councillor Miller and Councillor Sageman, all in favor. That's carried. Number 11, Board of Health. We have 5 items. I'll wait for Dr. Dewick to come forward. I have 5 items in correspondence to receive and file. Do we have a motion to receive these? Councillor Bean, seconded by Councillor Broad. All in favor? That's carried. And section B, information reports. We also have 5 items here. Councillor Bradley?
I will move them to receive and file. It's item E, I just want to have a quick discussion on.
Okay, so.
Which is the progress report and the budget pressures the health unit faces.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess the comment was, if I recall, I don't know if it was actually a resolution of council, but we did do it on one program. The second the province ended its full funding, we exited the program. Is that going to be the way of the future? Because, you know, again, we get enticed into them. We enter into them in good faith, and then they come along and reduce the funding, and then we're left to pick up a big part of the bill. So I don't know if that's a policy that we want to debate, that we should simply, if you exit the province, then we no longer continue to offer the service. And I'd be interested in any comments from the medical officer of health.
Okay, Dr. Dewick, would you be able to comment on that, please?
Through you, Warden, I'm wondering if Andrew Taylor could help respond to that question.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through you, Warden, to Councillor Bradley. You're absolutely right. I think for our county policy and practices, anytime the province introduces 100% funding, for example, and when that funding is removed, staff report back to county council for instructions. That's been a standing edict, and typically in any motions that council's endorsed, it would state that.
Thank you.
Okay, so a motion to receive and file these 5. Councillor Atkinson moves, second by Councillor Agar. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Dr. Dewick. Item number 12, items not requiring a motion. Seniors Advisory Committee minutes of April 25th. Do we have a motion to receive these? Councillor Sageman and Councillor Miller. Seconds, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And item number 13, reports requiring a motion, Social Services Division, report dated July the 5th regarding Housing Accelerator Funds. Councillor Bradley.
Happy to move the motion, but I also just have a question. It's not very specific on what the projects are, or have you determined that yet?
Ms.
You mentioned three or four communities, but have you determined what projects yet?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Sure. through you, Warden, to Councillor Bradley. We need to have 7 projects, and our projects want to be more focused on affordable housing because, again, being the upper tier. So we haven't landed exactly on each project, but as you know, we're working right now on the official plan. We're also looking at things like doing a CPI throughout the official plan, and the rest we're still sort of determining. We've not seen the application. I believe it may be open today. So we were developing this really based on the information, the background we had.
Councillor Case? Yes, please. Oh, hold it, we do have a seconder, I believe. Oh, no, okay. Yeah, thank you. Any further discussion? Call the vote, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. That brings us to item number 14, committee minutes. I'd call on Councillor Agar, please.
Just present the committee minutes, AM committee minutes as printed from the June 21st meeting.
Thank you. Under Infrastructure and Development Services Division, we had correspondence to receive and file with motion number 1. Under information reports of the same, motion number 2. And number 3 is reports requiring a motion regarding the temporary parking restriction. Under Cultural Services Division, correspondence receive and file is number 4. And reports requiring a motion, report dated June 21st regarding museums, gallery, and archives collections was number 5. And the report regarding the Mall Road Library relocation project was number 6. And adjournment was number 7. Councillor Agar, please. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cook. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. PM committee minutes. I'd call on Councillor Dennis, please.
I'll present the minutes as filed.
Thank you. Under Long-Term Care Division, under Corporate Services, report dated June 21st regarding additional information, that was number 1. Under Finance, Facilities, and Court, information report, first quarter financial update was number 2. And report requiring a motion regarding the signing authority process policy update was number 3. And under Social Services Division, number 4, information reports. In camera was number 5. It's Councillor Bradley.
I apologize because I had a question on the information reports, and I don't have the full reports here in this package. The homeless summit committee, small committee that was going to be set up, where is that at?
Ms. Calasani, please.
Through you, Warden, to Councillor Bradley. After Council approves this report or receives it, our intention was to have communication sent out to the 170 participants of the summit with the report, as well as the longer report, and it'll also be placed on the web. And we'll be looking for interest in that committee that you put in the motion at that time. So that will go out later today or tomorrow.
And number 6 and 7 was in camera, dealt with in camera. And number 8 was adjournment. Look to Councillor Dennis again, please. Seconded by Councillor McRoberts. All in favor? That's carried. And number 15, items tabled from previous meetings. There are no. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. Number C, audit committee minutes dated June 26. Motion to receive and file, Councillor Broad, Councillor Cook, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. And that brings us to number 15. There are no items tabled. So that brings us to 16, other business. Is there any other business? Councillor McRoberts and then Deputy Warden White, please.
Through the warden, Ms. Colasanti, I have a few questions. We're hammering you today, sorry about that. The summit, I have a few questions. I'll just list them and then if you can come back. What was the total cost of the event for the summit? If you have a ballpark for that, I would appreciate that. We had, through the collectives, the participants indicated there were 5 top priorities: affordable housing, public education, improved access to services, collaboration with our partners and crossing the barriers to accessing the services, and advocacy. With those, has there been a team put together to look at these priorities, how we will action those priorities and implement and improve if they're already existing on a list? Secondly, I dropped into the Laura Lee Center. I don't know if anyone else has dropped in. I'm impressed with the 4 air conditioners. That was great. 2 were already hooked up, 2 more were coming, so I could already feel an improvement in the building, which is great. The kitchen was fantastic. It was stocked. I'm happy to see that that's happening. What I would like to come from that is if we could get a monthly report. I know that the staff is taking numbers of how many people attend each day, and I'm just doing that because our lease is coming up in October, and I want to know if it's really being utilized. There's a little piece of paper, an 8x11 in the window on the side where you come in the entrance. I know there's little maps being handed out and where this building is, but for those that can't read, do they know if they didn't go there last winter, they wouldn't know where the building is? What can we put on the front? Is there a sign that's coming or something to let them know where they're going so that they can go in there? Because if there's a kitchen and there's a place to sit and a place to crash, they need to know where they can go for that. And what are we paying to be there as far as a lease and possibly insurance that we cover? And are we responsible for the utilities? Thank you.
Ms. Colasanti, please.
Sure. Through you, Warren, to Councillor McRoberts. Some of those things I'm going to have to get back to you. I don't know what the cost of the summit was off the top of my head, so I can send an email out about that. I would say the same for the lease. The lease at Laura Lee Church, I believe, actually goes until March 31st of 2024, and I don't know the exact details of the lease and the insurance. I'll have to look to legal and some of those to gather that, but certainly we can do that. As for monthly reports, we don't meet monthly as a committee, but I can certainly start to look at committee reports with updates, perhaps quarterly. You know, we could look to do one in the fall and then maybe even quarterly, if you would like. And going back to trying to make sure I get all your questions. Going back to the summit, when you looked at the summit report, many of the recommendations are being dealt with by one of our committees. Council might recall we have a Sarnia-Lambton Housing and Homelessness Committee made up of all of the experts in the community as well as federal and provincial advisors who sit on that, and that's also their #1 priority. So some of those are being looked at. We have other committees. We have a community collaboration committee. We have the frontline sort of housing committee. And recently through public health, you may recall their drug and alcohol strategy was approved. And I believe there are 3 subcommittees under that particular strategy. So many of those things are already on the radar. Many will be moved to a higher priority. And there was a motion on the floor, and Mayor Bradley spoke to it earlier. We will be doing an ask out if there's anyone in the community that attended the summit that would also like to come together and sort of review some of this in case there are any gaps. So that will be going out later, as I said, later today or tomorrow from communications.
Follow up, Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you. So I heard that we have committees that are looking after these. When can we hear back that they're actually being implemented, and what are we going to see some action out of that?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Many of those actually, if you drill down into the Housing and Homeless Report Card that's in Council package today, many of those will give an update on where we've moved on those objectives. I believe in the Housing and Homeless Report, there are just over 20 objectives, and many of them are reported on in there. So we can tie some of those back. Now, again, that was for 2022. And every day, the situation changes slightly, but we continue to do reports on those, and we'll be doing another report probably in the fall on some of the activities of the outreach team and the community support teams and how they feed into those objectives.
So Councillor McRoberts, if you're requesting further reports, I have to ask council how they want to deal with that, because it would have to be a motion of this council. So did you want to make that motion, or do you have something else you want to address first?
If we could, I would like to put a motion out, because this is how we're finding out if that property is even worthy of continuing with. So if I could make a motion quarterly, Ms. Colasanti said that that's doable, so if we could get numbers back on what is happening with that specific property, how many people we are putting through that are utilizing that, is it worth our time? And if we could have a report back on what we're paying for that lease and the insurance, is the value there for the people that were utilizing it?
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Deputy Warden White, further discussion on that motion? Ms. Colasani?
If I could add, that property is being looked at to be developed for affordable housing by another nonprofit, which is why our lease is there until March. We did plan on doing a fulsome review of who used it, was it valuable, all of those types of things. Is it the right location? And I had committed to coming back to council with that type of report. And if we determine that this is something we need on an ongoing basis, we would have to find a different location. And I believe at that time we would want to do probably some community consultation, things like that. So just so you know, that property, like I said, at this point is earmarked for an affordable build later with another nonprofit.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. Through you to Ms. Colasantri. The air conditioning units that were just put in, basically they'll be used probably for another 3 months. Were they put in at the expense of the landlord, or were they put in at the expense of the county?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Warden Marriott to Councillor Dennis. Those would have been put in at the expense of the county, and they would have been covered with our provincial homeless prevention funds. So when we're no longer there, they would belong to the county. Absolutely. We would determine if there's another county facility that requires them through our facilities department.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you. So is this a duplication then? The motion putting forward is duplication of the work that's already being done? Does the motion need to go forward? I guess that's what my question is. Thank you.
Ms. Colasani, would you like to respond to that, please?
Through your Warden to Councillor Cook. I think it depends on, exactly what the motion is. I mean, we were planning on bringing back a report closer to the end of this year. If you're looking for more regular reports, that would be the motion, if that clarifies.
Councillor McRoberts.
I seem to be under the impression that at one time we were using this property to extend our lease, so that if we're not having a chance to extend that lease, then I guess I don't need any of the well, I do need the information, but we can wait for it. So there is no chance of us continuing on there after our lease is finished.
Ms. Colasani.
Through you to Councillor McRoberts. I mean, we are working very closely with the nonprofit. Come March, you know, if we were still needing it and they weren't about to break ground yet or something. So I don't want to say, you know, give you an actual date, but we are working in partnership with them. And that's why that location was available for us. Because they still have to go through their studies and their zoning and those types of things. So it was sitting there, and the owners sort of committed not to selling it while this other organization could get sort of their ducks in order, if you will.
Follow-up, Councillor McRoberts.
I'll drop the motion. My follow-up question is, are we currently seeking out other properties then, should that end then, that we know we've already got in motion to move into as a potential property somewhere in Sarnia.
Okay, so motion's withdrawn. Okay, with the seconder. Anything else under other business? Deputy Warden White.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I'll just briefly say I, as well, visited the Housing and Homelessness Resource Center yesterday. Well done. Those portable air conditioners are making a substantial difference. So great. Well done. I think it'll be. I think it'll. You know, with the appropriate data, it will teach us a lot.
Okay.
But that, sorry, I perhaps missed the boat earlier on the accelerator fund. It just went by fairly routinely. So I think given the nature of our discussion today, I just wanted to say thank you to staff. A lot of work went into that, and the outreach with our member municipalities, including the City of Sarnia, was vitally important. And I think that this was well led by county staff, and I just wanted to publicly say that and thank you for that.
Thank you for that. Councillor Case, please.
Yeah, just one more thing, Mr. Warden, through you and to County Council, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everybody that got out during the Watford 150th celebration. It was so good to see so many of the county councilors and so many of our senior staff people there. It was a great event. Our volunteers knocked it out of the park in every which way. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that had the opportunity to attend. And also I wanted to wish our neighbors in Brook Alvinston, Inwood specifically, congratulations. I want to wish them congratulations on their 150th year as well. So thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you for that. It's good to see the lower tier celebrate these things after 3 years of uncertain times. So yeah, that was well done. Anything else under other business? Seeing none, move to item number 17, notice of bylaws. Please, Mr. Beauchamp.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. It has been moved by Councillor Case and seconded by Councillor Broad that bylaws number 24 to 25 of 2023 as circulated be taken as being read a first and a second time.
All in favor of that? Opposed, any? That's carried.
It is moved by Councillor Broad and seconded by Councillor Case that bylaws number 24 to 25 of 2023 as circulated be taken as being read a third and final time.
All in favor? That's unanimous as well. Thank you. That brings us to item number 20, adjournment. So the next meeting will be Wednesday, September the 6th, within camera to commence at 9 a.m. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Bean and Councillor Hand, all in favor? That's carried. Please join me in O Canada.